It's the day before basketball season, so let's take a look at Syracuse's roster.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, this is a two-part full basketball preview. We are joined by Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House. This first part, we are going to go over the Syracuse basketball roster in general. So we're going to talk about the returning players on this team, the new players on this team, and I'm going to spoil it right now, more than half the roster is new this season compared to last season. And then we'll give our roster strengths, where is Syracuse good, and maybe where they're weak, where can they improve as this season goes along. And once again, we are a day away from Syracuse basketball season opening. I cannot wait. Before we get to all that, before Neil opens his mouth, because I know he's got a lot to say, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can bet or can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Neil, thank you so much for taking the time on, well, we're recording this on Sunday morning. It's daylight savings today, so hope all is well with you with that, and the time change is all good. Five returning players on Syracuse basketball's roster: JJ Starling, Chris Bell, Naheem McLeod, Kyle Cuff, Chance Westry. What role do you expect each of these players to play?
Sure. Well, Jackson, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Definitely feeling refreshed today with that extra hour of sleep, although I'm not really a fan of getting dark 1 hour earlier, but it is what it is. So yeah, definitely pumped about the upcoming season. I think Syracuse is going to ultimately be better, I think, than a lot of the pundits are projecting, although I think a lot of those preseason projections are kind of stabs in the dark, given how much they're, like you mentioned, how much their roster has changed, just like a lot of other teams. In terms of the five returning guys, JJ Starling and Chris Bell, both juniors, Starling a combo guard, Bell a small forward, they'll be plugged into the starting rotation again. And I personally think they'll probably be the two leading scorers on the team. I think Eddie Lampkin is going to get his points. I think Donnie Freeman could get points, J.R. Davis, some of the other guys. I mean, it'll be interesting to see the kind of the scoring balances out there. They have a lot of depth on this team, but I think, Chris and JJ being, returning starters, veterans on this team. Chris Bell, I think, is going to contend for, leading 3-point shooting percentage in the ACC and, top 10, 15, 20, whatever across the country. He's just, sometimes he can get a little, hot and cold, just like any other shooter, but that dude can stroke it. I mean, there's no denying that. I certainly would like to see him continue to work on getting to the rim more, getting to the foul line. Obviously, everyone loves to talk about his rebounding, although I think rebounding as a whole on this team is something that we're going to have to monitor, not just looking at Chris. JJ was shooting the ball really well towards the latter half, second half of the season. In ACC play from deep, I think he'll shoot well from three, but he is an athletic guard that gets into the paint, can get to the foul line. And I think the two of them are just going to be, really solid foundational pieces. The other three guys, Chance Westry, as we all know, is, and I've been following Chance for years. I'm pretty sure that Syracuse was his first high major offer. And I think it was from Jerry McNamara back in, I might be missing the year. I feel like it was like the summer of 2019. I mean, it was a while ago. He was a 2022 recruit, but he got offered by Syracuse very early on. Obviously ended up at Auburn for a year. He was a top 40, national prospect in the 2022 class, but he played 9 or 11 games as a freshman at Auburn and none this past year. And then he didn't play in the 2 preseason games due to undisclosed illness. And, I think with something like that, I mean, people are like, oh, what was the illness? I'm like, I don't really care what the illness was. That's his private life. I just want him to be healthy and be able to play. I believe Coach Red said after the second exhibition game that he could play on Monday against Lemoyne, but it's not 100%.
He said that they're optimistic, but
right.
Call me
I mean, it's hard to be optimistic about anything.
About their optimism.
Yeah, no, and again, I think we've talked about this. I think you agree. A healthy Chance Westry playing at the level we think he can play in, a versatile guy who gets after it defensively. Not a great outside shooter, but an athletic dude that gets into the paint, great facilitator, just plays both ways really well. He's a wild card for this team, and at full strength, I don't think he's necessarily going to be in the starting rotation, but he'll get minutes. He'll get a lot of minutes. But is he going to play? How healthy is he? I hope he is, man, because I think this team has 12 guys, and I don't think there's a ton of separation between some of the starters and some of the reserves. But he is like, I don't want to say an X factor, but like if he's healthy and the goods that we think he can be, that is a game changer, I think, for Syracuse this season. And then
I was going to say about Chance Westry, this is something I noticed a little bit at times in the exhibition games. Mm-hmm. Who is the backup point guard really for Syracuse basketball? So the reason why I say that is because Jaquan Carlos is going to start, right? And we'll get to the new players in the next segment.
That dude's tremendous, man. Yeah,
and he looks really good.
Really good. Really good.
The backup, I think it's JJ Starling for now, at least until Chance Westry is healthy and his conditioning is good and everything like that. I'm not sitting here trying to suggest he's out of shape, but you haven't played in
he's been not feeling well.
You got to get yourself back into a game rhythm here.
Yeah, that's fair.
It makes a lot of sense, right? So I think for now it's JJ Starling as the backup point guard until Chance Westry can prove that he is healthy and his conditioning is up to speed. Because one thing you left out about Chance Westry, we know he has not a lot of talent. He's also really versatile. This is someone who can play 1 through 3. He can play 1 through 3. Teammates have raved. Coaches have raved. Scouts have raved about his court vision. So overall, he can play the 1 through 3. And I think I agree with you on this. He raises the ceiling of the team. If he is healthy and good to go, he raises the ceiling of the team. You mentioned Chris Bell. I think he's going to have an absolutely terrific year.
Yeah.
One of the best shooters in the country.
Yeah, totally.
Forget the ACC. Sure. Forget the ACC. One of the best shooters in the country. JJ Starling, if we can get second half JJ Starling.
Right.
That's the key. But
absolutely.
Are you with me on this? Because I think we will this season.
I think all the guys are going to have some ups and downs. And it's a roster with 5 returnees and 7 new players, including 3 incoming freshmen. But the way Coach Red and some of the other coaches have talked about it sounds like they're really tight off the court. Like, I think the whole, are they going to gel as a cohesive unit with all these new faces? First of all, every other team across the country virtually has to deal with some level of significant or, roster overhaul. But I don't think chemistry is going to be an issue. And your point about backup point guard is interesting because if everyone's healthy, I would assume that after Carlos, it would be either Starling or Westry. But, we'll see what's going on with Westry. And then you got a guy like Lucas Taylor, who I think is more of a 2-guard or even a wing, a small forward, because he's got a big frame, but he could maybe play some. And then Kyle Cuff. It's going to be fascinating for all of us to see what the minutes distribution are, especially as they get into tougher games. I mean, some of these easier games, he's going to play all 12 guys, or if Westry's at, 11 guys. But, I don't think he'll shrink it down, assuming there's no long-term injuries. I don't think he's going to be like Jim Boeheim with, a 6-man rotation. I think he'll still be playing 8+ guys, sizable minutes. But yeah, in terms of a backup besides JJ and Chance, Kyle, Lucas, I don't think Elijah Moore, I think he's more of a 2, or the way he's growing, he could be more of a 3 as well. But I mean, it might be Carlos is going to get a lot of minutes. And if he's obviously, God willing, no injury issues and, issues with foul trouble, he's going to play a ton, because that dude is just a steady point guard, a pass first point guard who can score, but doesn't need to. I mean, he's got 16 assists and 1 turnover through 2 and I know they're exhibitions, but I mean, he's just steady. But anyway, I know we're going to get to the new guys after that. In terms of the so who are we? So Kyle, I've always liked Kyle. I mean, he obviously has had a lot of injury issues dating back to his initial time at Kansas. I think he's an athletic player. I think he can shoot from, be a credible 3-point shooter. I think with him, I'm not saying he's lacking confidence. It's just that he doesn't play a ton. So if he's worried, if I make 1 turnover, or if I miss a shot, am I going to get the yank? I mean, I think he's a solid backup guard. I mean, I don't know. Is he going to get 10 minutes a game, 15 minutes a game? But he's a solid player. And then Naheem, I mean, he, in that second exhibition against Slippery Rock, with Eddie not playing much, I think he had 9.7 boards. Again, Division II opponent, but a quality Division II opponent. If assuming that he seems like he's fully healthy, he can be a good backup center. The dude's 7'4", and I think he runs the court pretty well. And if Eddie gets into foul trouble or whatever, I mean, I think he's going to be the starter and play more minutes. But who wouldn't want a pretty mobile 7'4" guy as their backup center?
The one thing about Naheem, before we transition to the new players, is his weakness, I think, is the same. It's on defense. It's not his shot blocking, but it's his foot speed on defense. He's a little bit slow on his feet there. I think that's his weakness, but I think him and Eddie Lampkin complement each other really well, because Eddie Lampkin's not known for much defense. I mean, hopefully he plays a lot of defense this season, right? We hope he gets better, but that's not his specialty, right? Naheem McLeod, not the most offensive player, but he'll get some rebounds because he's 7'4", and he'll block some shots. He'll block some shots for you. He's 7'4". He'll be around the rim.
I think the way they kind of mesh together, it's like a quality center spot. And then obviously, you got 2 of the 3 freshmen I think could play some center, small ball, Freeman and our friend from overseas, who I think is going to be such a fan favorite, Peter Mastorovich. Am I saying that right? I hope I'm saying that right.
I think it's Mastorovich. See, I've heard
Mastorovich.
Okay. Three different pronunciations for him. Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan or basketball fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing overtime, which we saw yesterday with Syracuse football, and they won. So it wasn't really agonizing than that, right? Which is why they've created the Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. And you know what gave me the Fan Fuel moment this week? Well, when Syracuse football walked it off with a fumble yesterday. That was fantastic. That was really, really nice to see. Syracuse football now 6-2. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. Yeah. Let's actually transition to the new players right now, all right? Okay. We're joined by Neil Adler from inside the Loud House here. Full basketball preview. This is only part 1. We're just really going over the roster here. So with Peter Mastorovich, okay, I heard Coach Autry say Mastorovich.
Okay,
I think Peter himself said it what it actually is, but it's tough to tell because of his accent.
Sure. I feel like on at least, yeah. I feel like on the broadcast for the exhibitions, Mastorovich, yeah. Should we call him Peter M?
Let's call him Peter.
M man.
Peter M.
Peter.
I like. Peter.
He's going to be a fan favorite, dude. That guy, I like his game. I do. I mean, I don't. I'm sorry. Did you want to tee this up more? I didn't want to.
We'll just roll right into it.
So we'll start with him. I mean, he just I don't remember his stats from the second one, but in the first game, he started, and obviously Autry was, doing different lineup combinations. He's not going to. I don't think he's going to be the starter at the tomorrow night.
Side note on that, I'm in a group text with a lot of my Syracuse buddies and everything like that. They were freaking out over the first exhibition game starting lineup. They were like, wait a minute, where's Chris Bell? And I'm like, guys, relax.
he had two different, not completely different lineups, because I think Starling and Carlos were both in both of them, but then multiple other guys.
Then everyone else shifted.
That doesn't mean anything.
Jair Davis was the starting center in the second exhibition game.
Right. It was Davis and Freeman. And then in the other one, it was Peter and Eddie. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. But with Peter, again, we didn't know as much about him in terms of, he's, from Europe, and, we're not seeing articles about him like Elijah Moore and Donnie Freeman that, play in the States, and one played in overtime elite, one played in the EYBL Scholastic, they play AAU, all that jazz. So he's a little bit more the, not as known per se, kind of like with Luke Fennell, the 2025 commit, but both those dudes can play. Because I've talked to some of my buddies that are analysts and scouts that have watched them prior to them committing. I obviously hadn't, and they're like, yeah, these dudes can play. So with Peter, I think he's probably more of a traditional 4. I think he's 6'9", but again, 6'8", small ball, 6'8", 6'9". He could play some, but it's like I don't know, is like Marek Dolezaj like a good comparison? And I'm not just saying that because they're both European guys, but it just seems like
I think it's too early on that. Too early.
Yeah. But I just think it's just he just seems like a dude that's gonna he can score some, and he seems pretty mobile for a guy his size, and again could probably play multiple positions on either side of the court, but just he's gonna do things to help the team win. I don't know how many minutes he's gonna get this year. I don't know how much he's gonna score, but rebounds, assists, taking charge. I don't know. I feel like he'll just do whatever to help the team. I mean, I'm not saying other guys on the team aren't going to do things to help the team win, but he seems like he kind of fits that role with just like the do-it-all guy. Maybe he doesn't lead the team in any specific category. He's also only a freshman, but he's been playing against high-level folks. But then again, if we're
talking pro ball in Serbia, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So, I mean, that's pro ball. I mean, college basketball at this point is professional, but it's semi-professional. But
that's the thing, with Syracuse and some of these European recruits or commits, is we don't necessarily, as fans, or you and I obviously follow the team pretty closely. We don't know as much about them, but they can play, and they might not show up in the recruiting rankings because they're overseas. But
they're overseas. They don't. It's hard to go on. Of course, I'm going to cover it, and we're both going to cover it when I get a new player.
Of course.
But everyone wants to know, what's your star? Are you 5-star, 4-star, 3-star? What are you, right? And when it comes to Masterovich, or it came to Fennell, who they got, what was it, 2 months ago they got Fennell, right?
Yeah, it was last month.
There's no star on them. It's they're from Europe. I don't know what to tell you, but I think they're good.
But they're like you're saying, they're playing in pro leagues. Fennell's playing in the NBA, I mean, the National Basketball League in Australia. So these dudes can play. So, again, we'll see how much time Peter gets as a freshman, but I do like his game. And then if you talk about the 2 other freshmen before you get into the 4 transfers, I mean, Donnie Freeman comes in, McDonald's All-American, number 6, ranked as high as number 6 in his class, one of the best players in the EYBL Scholastic this past year, highest ranked commit for Syracuse since Carmelo Anthony. I mean, what do you say? I mean,
he's going to be good.
Yeah, he's going to be really. He's going to be really good, and I had been following him for multiple years as well, because Syracuse offered him, I think, when he was in 8th grade. I mean, verbally, obviously, they couldn't start communicating with him until the contact period opened much later. But and he was playing in DC for St. John's, which became a nationally ranked team his junior year, and then moved to IMG and was playing the best of the best in that league. Got to the Chipotle Nationals, the 8-team national championship tournament. And he was an all-league player and played in all these All-American games, and he's going to be really good. But he's also an incoming freshman, and I'd hate to, we saw this a couple of years ago with Benny. Benny wasn't ranked as high. He was a 5-star, top 25 by rivals, but he was more like a top 35, 40 elsewhere. Donnie's a consensus top 15 recruit, nationally ranked as high as number 6. There's a difference. And I think is he going to start? I don't know. I like Jair Davis's game too.
So. I think so.
I think he probably will, but it's interesting because you say, oh, okay, well, Donnie's been playing against the best of the best in high school, and that's true. But Jair Davis, if I'm not mistaken, last year averaged 17 points a game for Delaware?
8 over at Delaware, yeah.
So is the competition in Delaware's league better than high school competition? I would say probably so. You don't think so?
No. I meant like his competition's better than it.
Yeah, they're just older guys. They're stronger. It's just like going from college to the pros.
What I would say to that is,
yeah,
based on Jair Davis's league. What was it? The CA? What conference is Delaware in? The CAA?
I'm having a senior moment about what conference they're in. I could look it up while we're talking.
But they're a mid-major conference.
Yeah.
They're older, they're more experienced, but they do not have the same upside as where like a Donnie Freeman was playing. Donnie Freeman was playing at IMG Academy. Like,
that's fair.
He is not the only 4 or 5-star player on that roster alone.
Oh, gosh, no.
And the teams he's going up against are full of 4 and 5-star players, even 3-star
100%.
players too. Like
100%.
So the upside of those players is higher, but they're all younger. So there maybe are a little bit more raw talent. Whereas if you get into the mid-major, it's, hey, these guys are older. They're going to be in their 20s. And they have a little bit more seasoning in general. So it's a mix. It's a balance. So I would say probably mid-major competition is harder than elite high school.
Yeah, again, just because they're older, they're stronger. But your point's well taken. I mean, Jair
and I want to make clear, this is not like comparing the NBA and college. This is not
there's that's
there is a legitimate discussion about mid-major versus elite high school.
Yeah. Well, either way, I think that so it looks like Delaware is in the CAA right now, but it looks like they're moving to Conference USA. I must have missed that or forgotten about that because there's so much
under the radar realignment.
Well, yeah. I think Donnie probably will get the start, but Jair Davis is a really good player that's versatile, can play the 3 and the 4. So he's going to get his minutes. I think the thing with Donnie is, I mean, he improved so much and got so much praise from national analysts about his improvements. You know, he's always been an athletic, mobile guy that can get high above the rim and dunk it and all that, but his perimeter shooting's gotten a lot better. So but again, he's a freshman. He's not as physically as strong as a Jair Davis, and that's not his fault. He's 3 or 4 years younger than him. So they're both going to play, but I'm high on Donnie. I think Jair is going to be, you know, I feel like he didn't have a really great shooting percentage from the perimeter last year for Delaware.
Actually, in 3 years, he was like 25, 26%.
Yeah, so not great. But I do remember Red saying, maybe it was after their annual media day, that he's been shooting the ball better in practice from deeps, practice. And he
shot the ball well in the second exhibition game too. He made a few three-pointers.
He hit a couple. So, he can play. He's a physical guy. I think, he's a power forward. I think he could probably play the 3, maybe in a small ball lineup. Like you said, he could play the 5. So I think he'll get his minutes too. And then that brings us to Carlos and Lucas Taylor. And, you don't want to get too making grand proclamations or too over the top, and I love Judah Mintz's game and some of the other, recent point guards, but I just feel like Carlos is given all the other guys on this team that can shoot it from deep or just, make, shots from where, mid-range or whatever. His court vision, his calmness, his steadiness, I think he's going to have a really good assist turnover ratio. He can score. I think he scored 14 points in the first exhibition, 6 of 8, again, exhibition 2, division 2 foe. But then he had 10 assists and no turnovers. And in the second game, I don't even know if he shot the ball. But
he actually didn't score, but it's okay.
I don't think he scored, but he had 6 and 1. So 16 and 1 over 2. It's like everyone, it's like, oh God, who's going to be our point guard? And is it going to be Carlos? He's from Hofstra. The dude was top 15 in assists per game last year. I know Hofstra's not in the ACC, but this is the world we live in, where guys are coming in and they're transfers from mid majors, and then they make a huge impact. Sometimes they do better more than others. And then obviously you have incoming freshmen at the high school level. And I think Carlos is going to be, I think him and Eddie Lampkin, in terms of having a true center that can score inside, can facilitate inside and out, and then a true point guard, pass first point guard. I think that's why I think Syracuse is going to get back to the tournament. I mean, they have other pieces that have to play well, but I think those are 2 huge things. And then I'll just wrap up and let you talk. Is Lucas Taylor? I mean, he's another guy. He's ultra athletic from Georgia State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
did well there, obviously adjusting to a new role at an ACC school where he's not going to get as many minutes. But as far as I can tell, he can play the guard spot. He's, I think, 6'5", 200 pounds, 200. So he's got a strong frame. Maybe he can play out on the wing as a small forward sometimes, depending on the lineup. Autry's going to have so many interesting lineup combination possibilities at his disposal. But I like to. The thing about these 4 transfers, they're all seniors, and then Eddie's a grad student. They've all, moved to a school where they, in theory, most of them might not be playing quite as much, Carlos and Lampkin, but they different roles, but they want to play at an ACC school, want to maybe try and do damage in the ACC and ACC tournament. And it seems like everyone's buying into the team first mentality. And so I like the roster. There's a lot of new pieces, 7 out of the 12. And I know it's hard to kind of project Syracuse given so many new pieces and they haven't made the tournament in 3 years, blah, blah, blah. I think they're going to finish higher than 11th in the league. I don't know. What do you think?
I think so too. But we'll get to that part 2 of this podcast here. There's one newcomer though that we haven't discussed yet, and I'll just briefly mention him, and then we'll move on to the overall roster takeaways and everything like that. Elijah Moore, 4-star player, top 50 overall in the country. Top 50 overall in the country, a shooting guard.
Love him.
Here's the deal: if he can shoot, he's going to play. It's really that simple. And I have high hopes. And we're going to find out on Monday night how much he plays. And when he plays, can he shoot? It's really simple. If he doesn't shoot the ball well, he's not going to play. But I have faith. This is one of the premier shooters in all of high school coming into this season. I think he can translate it to the college game. So your 7 new players on the roster: Donnie Freeman, Eddie Lampkin, Jaquan Carlos, Jair Davis, Lucas Taylor, Elijah Moore, and Peter M. Those are the 7. We just talked about all of them in one way, shape, or form. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets, all on the NFL in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Let's talk about Syracuse football for a second. They were an underdog against Virginia Tech this week. How about that? They pulled off the home upset against Virginia Tech. I believe they were plus 3.5 on that game. And hey, they pulled off the upset, so good for them. Take advantage of those odds, right? When they come out against Boston College soon, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We are joined by Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House. We've gone over the returning players and the new players. Let's just talk about the roster in general now. Just an open conversation, open floor, all right?
Sure.
What do you think is the biggest strength?
Yeah. Well, just for 5 seconds, I'll just tell you that I agree with you about Elijah. He's a great shooter. He's worked his butt off to keep improving on defense, ball handling, decision making, and he's just a really nice kid. So I'm rooting for him personally. With that being said, the roster. What's that?
We got to see the celebration. We got to see that celebration from him. He didn't break it out in the preseason.
Yeah, no, he's just a good kid. He's just a really good young man.
I get it. I'm not disagreeing with you on the good kid part. Yeah. I'm just saying I was hoping for the whatever. They kept teasing at the broadcast that he has some sort of celebration that he does after he hits a 3 or whatever. And I was like, well, where is it? Like,
where is it? Yeah.
I guess it was just the exhibition didn't rile him up enough. Whatever.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the biggest strength in your opinion on the team?
Sure. Well, it's interesting. Just like last year, ahead of the season, Coach Autry, in his first year, was talking about the depth and versatility of the roster, and now obviously they got hampered some by Western not playing at all, Naheem going down after 14 games. Benny Williams obviously got dismissed from the program in this past February, and then some other guys missed games here and there, so their depth did get tested, and that could certainly happen this year as well. But I do think that the depth and just kind of the ability for Coach Autry and his great staff to employ different lineup combinations, have different guys out there, and when reserves come in, like they can still ball. I think personally. And you've got, we were talking about who's going to be the backup point guard, with Westry, you're not sure what's going to happen with him. So, but I do think they have a deep backcourt. I think they've got multiple guys, both at small and power forward that can do well. And I think they're, they've got the center spot again, assuming Eddie's doing his thing and stays out of foul trouble and Naheem's fully healthy. I just think they've got nice pieces at every position. So I like that. I think they've got obviously some dudes that can stroke it from deep and certainly basketball at the high school, college, pro level is a lot of, shooting threes. Chris Bell's going to get his, like you said, if Elijah Chopamore, is in there and he hit 4 in the second exhibition, I think. And I don't think he is the type of player, even though he's an incoming freshman and maybe his minutes would be limited, but he's not a cocky guy, but he's got confidence. He's got some swag.
Okay to be confident. You're supposed to be
there's
confident.
Nothing wrong. So my thinking is with that, even if let's say he gets in tomorrow or in some of these early games where, hopefully Syracuse is blowing out its competition. We'll see about Colgate, but
no more Colgate scares.
He'll shoot it with confidence, even if he'll keep shooting. So I think he can, freshman, it's always tough if you're playing limited minutes. We'll see how he does. But I think Donnie Freeman can shoot it. I think Eddie Lampkin can hit it a little bit from back there. I think Lucas Taylor, Jair. I don't think there's – and then obviously, I forgot about J.J. Starling. But obviously, besides Chris Bell and then, like, second half of last season, J.J. Starling, there aren't, like, a lot of proven commodities in terms of hitting reliable three-point shooting at Syracuse because a lot of these guys were at other schools. I think Carlos hit 34% from deep last year.
Yeah, but he was at Hofstra, yeah.
Right. Like and I think Lucas Taylor hit around 35%. So
35% at Georgia State, but in a limited sample at Wake Forest the year before, he was at 40%, but it was a super limited sample.
Sure, of course. So again, I think the potential for being pretty good from three is there. I don't want to see them like over rely on threes like a couple years ago when the Boeheim brothers are there. I just think I want to see them. They've got they've got a deep team. They've got a lot of athletic guys. I want to see them press. I want to see them force turnovers. I want to see them get out in transition when they're in their half court offense. I'd really like to see them have a lot of crisp ball movement, have screens, pick and roll, like movement, not just ISO ball. ISO ball drives me nuts. And so we'll forget about prior seasons. And I feel like with Carlos running the point, we're going to get some nice action going on. And again, Eddie is a really good passer out of the center spot. And I think he can score some in the paint, but I think when he gets the ball in the paint, especially because he's pretty physical, if he gets doubled, like he'll find open shooters. So, we'll see how much paint scoring they get. I think it will be a solid part of their repertoire. And I think 3-point, I don't think they're going to have an issue scoring. Obviously when they start playing tougher opponents in the non-conference like Texas and Tennessee, and then obviously ACC teams, we'll see what happens. But I think 3-point shooting could be a strength. I think just, again, depth at every position and not having a lot of drop-off between starters and reserves, I think is a strength. Again, we'll see how much they're doing inside in the paint in terms of paint scoring. But I think they have an athletic team and they can force a lot of turnovers and get a lot of transition buckets as well. Yeah.
So I'm pretty much with you on this. I have a strength, balanced scoring, deeper team in general. I just think they have more guys who can play. That's about as blunt as I can put it. They got more guys on this roster who can play compared to last season. I think last season you can argue they had maybe a tad more top-end talent. They don't have the scorer like a Judah Mintz. They don't have that on this year's roster. But they got more players. They just got more. They got more that can play. So I think it's a much deeper team. I think the potential to be a really good shooting team is certainly there. There is a weakness right here, though. Or not a weakness, more like a question mark to me.
Defensive rebounding.
I don't think it's rebounding. I think it's just
no.
Defense. I think they're good on the. I think they're going to be good on the glass. I think Eddie Lampkin's a good rebounder. Donnie Freeman should be able to rebound. You got Jair Davis, who was a really good rebounder there.
They've got long guards.
He can rebound. They can rebound. They got the personnel now where I think they have the height, they have the strength to where they can be a good rebounding team, which they have not been in so long. It's been forever since they were a good rebounding team.
Right.
I'm not worried about their rebounding because I think they can be pretty good. It's just their defense in general. I look at their roster right now. Jaquan Carlos was an all-conference defender, albeit he's a small guard.
He is.
Like,
he's 6 foot.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you want him to be a good defender, but it's like that's not the most important position to be an elite defender. You need to be elite, especially on the wings and inside. So, I mean, Donnie Freeman, I think, is a good defender, but he's coming from high school.
Sure.
And then outside of that, does this team have enough stoppers on them? Or are we just going to get into games where it's 85-80 every single night?
Yeah, it's a great point, Jackson, and I think time will tell. Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting, and obviously they're going to play a lot more manned, I would assume, than zone. I mean, they've got some athletes. They've got some guys that have obviously height and length and are physically strong at both in the backcourt and the front court. But yeah, I think I don't know if it's a weakness per se. I think it's a question mark. Is that the right phrase? I feel like,
well, I mean, people are going to look at on today's show and see strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. I'm not going to put strengths and questions. That just doesn't sound right. It doesn't.
I just think it's not a strength until we see it become a strength. That's the way I would put it. So, and they did give up 71 or 72 points in that first exhibition to Clarion. So
yeah, I know, but then they cleaned it up in the second exhibition game.
They did.
You can't take too much away from that. Like
totally.
It's like, okay,
I totally agree.
So
yeah, no, I agree. I think defensively, guarding guys, how are they going to do with their perimeter defense, rebounding, getting out in transition? Yeah, I think those are things that I will definitely be curious and be monitoring. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So that is Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House. We are just about done with part one of this full basketball preview guide. We went over basically the entire roster. We talked about the returning players, the new players, the roster strengths. I know on today's show it says weaknesses, but let's call it questions because we're feeling nice today.
Okay.
I can't, strengths and questions it doesn't roll off the tongue. Strengths and weaknesses, okay? So we talked about that as well. I think overall, me and Neil are in agreement that this is probably a better roster than it is last season. And we have high hopes for this upcoming season, which, by the way, it starts tomorrow. And this was only part one because stick around. We got part two coming up soon.